I need 7.
How you doing? All right, good. Results? Rain all day.
Welcome to our City Charter Review Committee meeting. Today is September 30th. It is Wednesday, and we will get started with attendance. Judith Garcia, present. Leo Robinson. Marshall is absent. Calvin Brown.
Present.
Melinda Vega Maldonado.
Present.
Todd Taylor. Rosemary Carlisle.
Hello.
Yesenia Alfaro. Henry Wilson. Alex Barcalcel.
Present.
Alex is here. Mary Burke. Present.
Where do you live at?
Jason Stalker. Conversations, please. Jason Stalker. Okay, Charlene McLean did excuse herself, so she's absent. And Miriam Racantor. Present. Great, so that's attendance for us. We have quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started with a quick review of the purpose and process of this specific charter review committee. For everyone else who is joining us via Facebook, I'm excited to actually announce to this group that not only are we streaming via the City Chelsea website, the Facebook page, but we're also streaming via the Chelsea Community Cable TV Facebook page. So we're streaming on 2 Facebook pages on Facebook, and we are also streaming on channel 22 via Comcast. For the folks who are joining us today for the first time and watching this special review committee, the purpose of the specific committee is to review the city charter, which is the most important legal document of our city. We take suggestions of recommendations of any changes that we would like to see implemented on the city charter. And today we are actually discussing section 8. That was what was assigned for us to read and talk about. But of course, we always like to revisit any other sections that we may have missed or any other comments. So that being said, we are just a few sections away from finishing our full review and individual readings. So we will get started with section 8 shortly. So now we're moving on to any lingering questions and comments from previous sections. I have a comment received from Miriam Racantor. On section 7, I see, Miriam, that you have a question regarding section 7, so I'll give you the floor. Let us know what area you have questions about. You are on mute.
Sorry. I want to know when they count the mail-in votes. What day?
Cheryl.
All ballots are open on the day, once the election is closed. So they start counting the night, probably around 8:30 that night on election day. So we get absentee ballots, which is the standard way of the old-fashioned mail-in voter ballot. Somehow everyone thinks it's new, but absentee ballots are usually mailed in. This year, the mail-in ballot system was very well organized by the Commonwealth. You knew online whether they received your request, what you requested, and whether they received your ballot before the election or on the day of the election. And then they open them all at night. So when you send in your ballot, there's a cover envelope that logs you in. And then that actual ballot envelope, that's it, the inside envelope, is counted that night with the votes.
Okay.
Great, Mimi, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other lingering questions, comments regarding any other sections that we've previously discussed? So sections 1 through 7. No, we're all set with that portion. Great. So I'll move on to the next item in our agenda.
Henry Wilson.
Our public speaking portion. There is no one here for our public speaking portion, and we have not received any communications for our public speaking portion. So I will go ahead and close that portion, but if there's anyone watching at home and you'd like to make any comments regarding our charter, there are many ways to do so. You can email me at judithgarcia@chelseama.gov, or you can email our administrative assistant, Fatima, at Melara, MELARA, @chelseama.gov. You can also call 617-466-4060. Again, it's 617-466-4060, and you can leave your comments with her, or if you'd also like to come in and speak here presently, you can also call that number that I just mentioned, and we will add you to the RSVP list, and you can come join us on Wednesdays. We meet here at 6. So that's my spiel on public speaking. And now we move on to our most favorite section, which is the review section, where we discuss section 8. So for section 8, we received comments from Mimi. So Mimi, I'll give you the floor so you can walk us through what are some of your questions or suggestions that you'd like to see changed on section 8. And just for folks who are watching us, section 8 of our city charter discusses citizen participation mechanisms. So it discusses any citizen initiative measures, petitions that we like to pass, along with city referendum procedures and other areas. So it's a lengthy section, but I'll give the floor to Mimi so you can go ahead and ask your questions and make suggestions.
Okay, well, are there any guidelines for petitions listed anywhere so that people, want to do the petition? They have structured. Is there another part that I don't know about? It just says petition, but it doesn't say what connotes a petition. I was over there.
So a petition is however you wish to draft it. Normally, the sample that is given by the Commonwealth is you say exactly what you're requesting. So I think once in the past so many years, we had a petition to overturn an order or something, and this, you can come into the city council with so many registered voters. Usually you have to put the name, the address, because the clerk's office has to check that they're registered voters and residents, and so depending on the petition. So there's really no formal way to petition in Chelsea. I just want to say, so if you said, I wish to recall the council president, and the recall tells you how many people, I think it's 300 registered voters, that's what you write as your petition, and then you sign it. If the petition itself is vague and doesn't make sense, the city solicitor and the city clerk have the right to ask you to rephrase it
Okay.
under state law.
Well, okay.
Chapter 40.
Go ahead.
It's in chapter 43. Different cities that have different forms of government. If your charter does not give you an option of any type of initiative that you would like to bring before the city, if it's silent, you can actually look in chapter 43, and it gives you a lot of language about cities and towns, especially cities that have city managers like Chelsea and Cambridge and Worcester and Lowell. Those are quite different cities because they have city managers. They're different with cities that have mayors, like Boston and Lawrence, and the other cities that have mayors. But it gives you some of the language if you want to read up on how cities petition and what they petition for. I think if you look at recalls, you have to be specific about what you want to recall an elected official for. And that started in California about 10 years ago, and it's just been rolling out, and a lot of folks have just been biting onto it. So, but if you really want to find out some stuff, you can read chapter 43, Mass General Law. It's online. You can pull it up.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilor Brown. And specifically for anyone who's watching online or on TV, our recall petitions are on section 8-8. And as you mentioned, if you want to recall a specific elected official, based on your charter, if it's an at-large elected official that you'd like to recall, then you need at least 300, an affidavit signed by at least 300 voters and at least 100 signatures for an elected an elected official at the district level. So that really speaks to
actually recall is not in the Mass General Laws. Impeachment is in the Mass General Laws. If you search the Mass General Laws, recall, as Councilor Brown said, is a creature that cities and towns have been doing on their own. So our actual recall process is clearly just Chelsea's recall process. So when you look on chapter 43, they give you ideas, but they're not really the way that Chelsea has done it. So that's what recall is different than impeachment. So historically, you can impeach a politician. You couldn't necessarily have recalled them until they started doing so around the time California did it on a regular basis.
Yeah, and for the purposes of this meeting, we want to focus on the way things are done in Chelsea, because what we are reviewing is our city charter. So I definitely want to stay on topic with that. So
can I just speak again? So I was speaking on two different subjects. One was a recall. The first one what Mimi had was about petitions. So I'll give you an example of a petition. If you would like to say we want to go back to elect a mayor, that wouldn't be a recall. That would be a petition.
Yes.
And that's where 43 comes in, and that's what other general law charter is quiet about. You can get that info.
So great. So in that clarification, I know that the subject of bringing a mayor is something that interests a lot of our residents here in Chelsea. So in that process, that would be a petition that would be made, and based on our charter, that petition can be established through the requirements on section 8-1. Is that correct? Cheryl, can you hear us?
So there's several ways to bring about a mayor. It could be through this process, charter review. And a petition is different than changing the charter. So a petition is 9 times out of 10 used more to change the measure of the city council, an ordinance, an appropriation. So the free petition is different. To change a charter, there's a whole nother process under the Mass General laws to do so. But you can petition to change the charter, which will get that process flowing. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because, okay.
Great, so then we're interested in changing the charter, we need to create a petition to make that request.
If it's not during our charter review process, outside of our charter review. Right now, if you want to change it, now's the time to change it. We still have to go to the voters and to the legislature, but now tells us, forget the petition, bring up your ideas here, let's recommend it to the city council.
Great, awesome. So in terms of Mimi's question of the guidelines for the petition, that's what's listed on section 8-1.
Yes, the process, yes.
Mimi, does that answer that question for you?
It does. It might be helpful to have a reference to what Councilman Brown did, have a reference to the Mass General laws. So if somebody's reading this and they were having a petition, because I just think it's a little confusing as like what you would approach to an ordinance versus a petition versus, I just think people might need a little.
I can get you a pamphlet. I can get you a pamphlet. It's the general law. I mean, the general law.
I just think it might be helpful if it was like, just even a reference to say, just go to Mass.
So what Mimi's saying is to add this, what I'm hearing from you, Mimi, is to add that reference in the city charter, to say if you have any more questions, or if the individual has any more questions regarding what to do next, refer to MGL.
Correct.
Chapter 43, you said?
Yeah, that's what it speaks to.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of stuff. It's not just this, it's a bunch of stuff. You have to be specific what you're going at.
Okay.
Yeah, so Cheryl just said that, even if it's like with a charter.
Sure, we can't hear you, you're on mute.
Even with a charter review, you would still, I mean, it's petition, you want to know the starting point. I think she wants to know the starting point in the language and stuff. But that stuff is available, and it's in the.
There's samples everywhere.
Yeah.
Got it, great. So Mimi, I'll give you the floor for your other questions.
Well, the other question is on section 8.8A, why do we have to wait 6 months to recall it?
Say that one more time, I missed it. On section 8-A.
Section A.
8-A, yeah, okay.
Application.
You have to recall an elected official for the first 6 months. Why?
So there's no, so the recall again is a creature of the city of Chelsea, but I think it was about money. So you have to have a special election and it costs money to hold a special election. So, yes.
Explain.
Okay. Thank you. And then
That's basically, I believe, I wasn't here when they drafted the first charter, but most likely when they give time frames when it comes to elections, they cost money. Which nice is in our recall is if we recall a district, that special election is just held in that district seat. If it's citywide, if you recall a citywide councilor, you have to have a citywide election.
makes sense.
You also have to have a certain amount of days to have the election too.
Yes, notice, yeah.
Yeah.
180 days, then you can have an election.
Okay. Okay. Why are there so many different percentages? I 20%, 10%, 5%. Every section has a different percentage. Why? Can we just say 20, 30%? Can we just have it?
So what are you referring to? Because there's different percentages for different things. So on section 8-8 for letter E, the 40% is for the recall election. So there's different sections. And for all those different sections, there's different percentages. So Cheryl, I don't know if you want to take a stab on that.
So on E, it's 40% of those entitled to vote have voted. So you go and I don't know where these percentages came from. I wasn't here, but Chelsea felt like 20% of the voters should not overturn an election that perhaps there was 75%. I think that's what they were looking at when they look at percentages, is that we're going through this all over again. Some people might say, forget about it. So they really want a large amount of people to recall someone who was actually voted in.
That's 8.3, it's a 5%.
What's 8.3?
8.3 citizen referendum procedures, it's 5%. I just don't.
So citizen referendum procedures,
20% of the.
where does it say 5%? I'm sorry, I gotta read where she is.
The first line, if within 10% of the final passage of any measure of petition signed by voters equal in number to at least 5% of the total number of votes.
Okay, so citizen referendum appears to be trying to overturn a measure by the city council, not remove an elected official.
Well, I get the elected official part, but 5% seems pretty low.
It could be.
So can I just say something? So I believe in this case, we mean 5% is just the votes of not all registered voters. The other number is higher because it's all registered voters. There's a percentage in there to say 20% of registered voters, which you can probably have, just hypothetically, 20,000 registered voters or 15,000. But when you run for office, people may vote, they may only add up to like 1,500. So 5% is not a lot. I mean, 5% is a big number of 15%, 1,500. So that's, I believe that, is that right, Cheryl?
I don't actually know why we did what we did. I have to be honest with you. I'm just, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, Mary, go ahead.
I think the reason why there are different percentages is because you're looking at, in any one of these categories, your aggregate number on your percentages varies. So similar to what Calvin and Leo were saying, your aggregate number when you're initiating, for example, a referendum is going to be a larger number compared to registered voters are going to be a smaller number. And then if you look at the top of the next page, the bottom of 8-4, it says 30%, you have to actually have 30% voters that actually turn out. So it's stats that are put in so that we don't end up having a governance system that is constantly in flux and chaos because it's turning and churning.
Mm-hmm. That's what
Great, thank you, Mary.
Well, and the 20% relates to if there was a couple candidates and somebody decided to not, to resign, the next person who got 20% of the vote will be able to take that seat.
So that's correct, but that's 20%, you'd have to get at least 20%, because if you got 16, you wouldn't be eligible for that seat. So that's a lot. That's why I say, depending on if you're looking at the run for mayor, everyone, I mean, it could be 50.
You wouldn't be automatically eligible, but you could be appointed.
Yes.
In our charter. So it's a little different.
I said that. You could be eligible. But if you're running for mayor, you think it would be much more contested and much more heated race. So you don't want to just have 10% or 5%. You want to really have folks to go out there. And that's where the numbers, for that petition, it would be higher.
Great, thank you.
Well, and I think part of the history was when they had recalled when they recalled one of the mayors, they had to have a certain percentage in order to move forward. The case ended up in courts to really decide whether or not they had the 20% or whatever percentage was needed to have the mayor removed.
I have a question for Cheryl. Cheryl, maybe, I don't know if you have it with you. Is it possible, since we're talking about this, is it possible, if you don't have it tonight, the next meeting, you can actually have a copy of the recall petition or the reason why someone could be recalled, and you can actually read it out, and maybe the voters or the viewers is not here will get a chance to hear it. I don't know if it's online. I look for it.
So this is what I'm trying to tell you. There's no just one recall petition because every city is differently.
Right.
I could send around samples. I could send around samples, but you could recall for any particular reasons.
No, I'm talking about Chelsea. What reason? Give me a reason why a person in Chelsea could be recalled. Because it has to be defined in the act.
Okay, so you have to understand, in our charter, we don't define it. So there's a difference between someone who has to be removed and someone who has to be recalled. So to remove, you moved out your district, you moved out the city.
Correct.
You were convicted of a felony.
Right.
Okay, finally
Right.
convicted of a felony. But
Right.
to be recalled, it could be the district just not happy with how you're serving them. They got enough people to put in a petition saying he doesn't meet the needs of the district.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
because
so
I
I'm
haven't
just
been
saying
able to
is that
find
you don't have to have a reason, you just have to have, whatever, is it 300 people to be on the petition to agree?
Okay, so then.
You may want to put in reasons, but you don't have one.
So now, and I'll ask this question. Based on the question that you're asking and bringing it back to our responsibility here as a committee, would you find it helpful, and is it even remotely possible? Because what you're asking is, you basically would.
You don't have a reason to recall anyone. You can make it up as it comes.
Right.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is, would it be helpful to add a reason to the charter? I see Leo nodding no, so give us your reason why not.
Well, the reason that in the past, there was a mayor who won the election, got sworn in January, and never showed up to City Hall until April. So therefore, a group of people got together, got a petition, and moved for the recall.
Okay,
And that
yeah,
was-
but that's a history lesson. What
Right,
I'm
but
trying to understand is,
That was one of the reasons how a recall happened. You have
so
to
we're
have a
not
reason.
questioning the recall.
Yeah.
Well, what Councilor Brown is saying, there is no definition on our city charter when you read this on section B that explains to you why someone can be recalled. That's what I'm saying. We don't, about our history with the mayor, it's our history with the mayor.
Leo gave you an example. Judith, Leo gave you an example as to why. You can't limit why.
I'm not asking for an example. What Councilor Brown is saying is, and this is what I'm hearing from Councilor Brown, is on this section, I'm not asking a historical example.
No, that could be a current example.
Yeah, so what I'm saying, what I'm hearing from Councilor Brown is it would be helpful that on our charter, we actually set reasons why someone could be recalled.
Oh, you mean, so limit them. So basically you would limit them.
Okay, so we don't, I'll let Mary go ahead.
So I hear what Jim is saying. It's the clarity for someone reading it, right? But if someone's reading the recall section, they've got a reason in their head why they're reading it, right? And is it maybe the happy compromise, the sweet spot is, because I do agree, if we list reasons for recall, we may be limiting, because what you put in writing in a legal document limits, versus if you leave it open, there can be things that emerge that we don't know about that could be a reason for recall. So leaving it open, but maybe the caveat is a footnote that refers anyone looking for more information, specific information, cite the chapter 42, I think, on Mass General Laws you mentioned, but also set an appointment with the city solicitor and have whoever the city solicitor is at that time walk them through and sort of even advise them, like, if you're going to go down this road of recall, these are the steps that, but it really is more of a counseling session that we're referring them to in the charter.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think he crossed the line, because now you talk about the will of the voters and the will of the people. So for instance, if for one of us city council members here, charter members tonight, we leave here, we get in an accident, someone gets really hurt, and everyone said, oh, that was horrible, we found out this person was drinking, and, let's recall him. Another example, and I just use these two here, someone that's running for office or an office holder, they get caught looking in someone's window, peeping Tom, oh my God, this guy's peeping Tom. So every day, you can find legitimate, probably reason to recall folks. But what about the will of the voters? They voted these people in. You have to respect that. And I'm not advocating for or against, but I know most of the things that we've seen nationally and statewide is there's always like, okay, someone done something that was really morally wrong or really morally insane, and it was recalled. Not just, hey, this person got in a fight with someone and we're gonna recall them. You convict people before the court of law, and then you also can remove people from the will of the voters.
Well, from what you're saying, it seems that.
Cheryl got something to say.
No, you're not removing him.
So just 1 second, Cheryl. So what I'm hearing, I see what you're saying, but what I'm seeing here is that the will of the voter, that's why we're asking for these signatures. And Cheryl, you can clarify. We're asking for these signatures and this affidavit for signatures to ensure that there is some sort of checks and balances there. Is that right?
So a recall is like an election. You have to have a reason to recall. You convince 3 people initially, then you gotta convince the entire city or the entire district. So it is about the will of the people. It's just somebody is so offended or someone did something, they've got to convince 300 registered voters, right? And then they have to then go before the city. We verify their registered voters. Like the whole process is there that I don't think Councilor Brown's fears of changing the whole process is valid, because then you go to the voters. So I think our process is very difficult to say, oh, I want to recall Councilor Robinson because he wore Nikes and not Adidas. Like, you just can't do, people won't do that. It's costly to do an election, right? We haven't done that, but we have tried to remove people. The recall that the history shows is the person did something egregious to the city, not just to an individual, but to the city, right? And when it becomes criminal, we found a way to not have to do the recall. So I'm just saying to you is that I think your process is good. What to look at is, do you need only 300? Do you need 20% or 40%? And that's the checks and balances that you have written into your charter. To start listing individual ways to recall is that you ignore those other possibilities that we can't think of. And you're quiet. And in fact, you are actually silencing the voter when you say you can't do it for that reason.
Okay, great. No, that's a good. So essentially the consensus that we're hearing here, thank you, Cheryl, and Mary, and Leo, and Councilor Brown, and Mimi for bringing this up. The consensus we're hearing is let's keep it as is so it can be broad enough to cover any sort of possibility that may happen in the future, considering what's happened in the past. And the sort of signature system that we have and all the loopholes that someone has to go through are these specific checks and balances that allows us to ensure that this process is democratic. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, so in terms of what Cheryl is suggesting is if we want to increase the number of signatures, that's something we can potentially do to have an impact. How is everyone, and I'll give you guys time to sleep on it, think about it. I just don't want to be tossing around numbers, but if you see other cities that are working with other numbers that might be beneficial for us, then I'm happy to hear it out for any other, section here. So does that answer Mimi's questions? I know you had plenty of questions. Mimi, did we go on a tangent here?
No, you answered them. I just have one more, which is in section 8.8B.
It was great. Yeah. Go ahead, Mimi.
We should just is there any way we can download the petition, or do you have to like do it? Is there any way that technology can help with this? We can become a little bit more tech friendly?
I believe from what I'm reading here on this city charter, you can create your own petition.
They have typewriters. I don't even know anybody who owns a typewriter anymore. It says it either has to be completely printed or typewritten. I mean, isn't that a little bit?
Computer, you can type that.
I'm just saying, do we want to kind of update? You can't electronically submit this. You can't electronically have people sign.
No, it has to be verified.
Cheryl, you're on mute. Cheryl, you have the floor. Go ahead. Cheryl, you're still on mute.
I can't hear you.
Okay. Just don't click on it. Click on it. Cheryl,
Can you hear me?
now we can.
Okay. So, electronic signatures have not been accepted as a form, recognized as a sufficient form to file a petition. Petitions have been, they're similar to when the elected officials walk around for their, yes, but the top heading says exactly what you want to do in that petition. For example, when a bunch of property owners wanted a citizen referendum to overturn the property owner water discount thing, they didn't go as far as that. But Mary, for the record, I did counsel some because they called the city solicitor on how to do it. So there was going to be a petition to overturn a measure by the city council, but they all showed up and spoke to the city council. So we don't have a format because we don't know what people want. We just know that we ask them to do the same format that candidates submit to be placed on the ballot: name, print name, sign name, and address of registered voters. So we could always send them that form, but we don't have a standard form.
I know, but you can sign. I mean, I've signed a lot of legal documents by email, and isn't there? Do we want to? What I'm saying, since we only review every 10 years, like 2030, we might be a little bit more tax heavy. Do we want to put something in this charter to say that we want to embrace the technology, or do we want to leave it alone?
That's an open discussion for everyone. I know Brown had Mary, you'll go first, and then Councilor Brown. Mary, you're on mute.
Yeah, all right. So I hear what Mimi's saying. I guess where my mind goes to a little bit of a fear factor. I don't want to create an easy system. I like that it's labor intensive, to be honest. I like that you have to walk around and get 300 signatures, because it is a case of, it has to be a high bar to reach to overturn something that has gone on. If we're going to make it technology acceptable, I think that's a lot easier. And if that's the case, then I would be in favor of increasing the numbers. Right now, I am not in favor of increasing the numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I immediately, when we talk about, I see both points, but when I talk about Mimi, I'll go back to you, Councilor Brown. When I hear about what Mimi's saying, I'm thinking about the situation that we're in right now. I'm thinking about this pandemic. I'm thinking about how not in a million years did we think we would look at how this pandemic affected these elections and our presidential elections, where it's really affected our canvassing. A candidate can no longer knock on your door like things used to be because our public health conditions have changed. So I see Mimi's point where she's talking about accessibility and looking into the future, because who knows where this pandemic will take us. And we've already witnessed how this public health condition is taking a huge toll on the way we do things. So look at us now, half of you, most of you are virtually joining us right now because you can't presently be here the way things used to be. So I love, Mary, what you brought up, which is the idea of you're willing to compromise if we increase the number of signatures. So that might be something worth thinking but I see both points. I see both
But
points.
again, my fear is the constant chaos of churn that could conceivably take place if we, if we don't hold the bar high to have to make these decisions. So,
Yeah, that's a great point. I see, I'll let Councilor Brown go first, and then, okay, Todd Taylor. Councilor Todd Taylor. You're on mute.
Sorry, yeah. So there's another, I agree with Mary about this being, we don't want to make this an easy thing. I think it's if you can recall for any reason, it's got to be difficult to do it. But there's another thing in talking about the technology, and that's verifying the signatures, that the signatures are valid. So that's the real reason. You have to be able to validate the signatures, or else you could, there's lots of room for anybody trying to sign these petitions that aren't shouldn't be because they don't live in the city or whatever reason, they're not registered voters or whatever it is. So, I think that the court allowed these types of computer signatures in this pandemic, but I'm not sure that, these things come along. This is a 1 in 100-year thing. I'm not sure we have to enshrine, something that happens every years in this in charter.
I don't want to say anything.
I'm generally in favor of just leaving this section alone. I think it's probably difficult enough as it stands, and we haven't had any recalls for how many years?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I heard other people in previous sections say, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So, I think, I don't think that there's any reason to kind of monkey around with something that's worked.
Okay, great. Mimi, do you have a question?
No, I do.
So Leo, I'll go to Leo and then Mimi. Go ahead, Leo.
Well, I think the fact that you have to go out and get signatures, because if you do it electronically, if you're challenging me, I'm going to challenge every signature that's on that page. That I want to verify that this person who you're telling me signed this petition, signed the petition. And if we're doing it electronically, you're not able to verify until you bring it here to the city clerk, and then you have to match up that person's signature to what they have on record here at the council. And actually, in the neighboring city during this past election, a person who went out and got signatures and also signed other people's names to their nomination papers and got challenged by a candidate, got knocked out of being qualified to be on the ballot.
So your point is, you see the value of having to verify that signature the old school way. Okay, great. So there's no right or wrong answers here. It's a conversation. I see Mimi. I saw 3 hands go up, so I'll go Mimi, Cheryl, Mary. Mimi.
Okay, I think you guys understand what I'm saying. It's just technology is here. We don't know what it's going to be in 10 years. We don't even know if they're going to let you vote. They might even let you vote in 10 years on a computer. So, technology can move very quickly, and they can identify many things. And if we want to get people to participate more, and if you guys keep thinking you're going to have to go knock on the door in an old-fashioned way, I think you're missing the opportunity to get younger people who do not participate large and sign signatures. I'm not saying make it easier. I like the idea of higher signature. All I'm saying is do we want to put in the charter that we should review when technology becomes more sophisticated? It is pretty darn sophisticated at the moment. We can do banking. People can lose your identity. Yes. So this idea that you could walk up to Joe Citizen and that's how you verify it is I think, a little old fashioned. And we need to look at it, if you can transfer millions of dollars with no signature, why can't we at least put in a charter? That's all I'm saying, is some kind of verbiage to say we can do documents. There's no way, real estate transactions, banking, everything occurs online. And now and why can't we just put in here and say, hey, this is how we might want to do it. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying technology moves really quickly and we should embrace it and not just say, no. That's all I'm saying. I hope
Thank you, Mimi. So I'll go Cheryl, then Mary. Cheryl.
Thank you.
So, Mimi, for the record, it's a bit ministerial. Does that make sense? So when we want to update something, so like right now you're saying signature, but soon it may be your thumbprint. So there are ways around keeping up with technology. You could email your petition to 300 people. They could print it out, sign it, and mail it back to you, right? It doesn't have to be one page. So there are ways that we do accept, but really it's as to the Commonwealth, but we start accepting more and more things. I mean, Chelsea's a little slow up on the uptake on technology, but we do DocuSign for some of our contracts. But I'm just saying is if you put it in the charter, there's no need to because it's a ministerial. So if the Commonwealth says you can accept computerized signatures, then I'm going to accept them. That's all. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be written in the charter to change the form of acceptance of a petition. Because technology changes all the time.
Okay, so what you're saying is if someone decides to create an electronic petition, we'll accept it.
No, what I said was if the government allows us to accept electronic signatures, we would accept them. But right now we have not been allowed to accept them because they can be easily contested.
Okay, thank you. Mary and then Councilor Todd Taylor. Mary, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. I just want to be consistent as much as for myself. I need to be consistent in my thought processes throughout this entire document. So I don't want to be contradictory in terms of what I believe and what I'm stating. So if the previous sections, I have been in favor of our city leaders, our city councilors, our school committee members, increasing their outreach to citizenry, to voters. And I've been the one that has said, that's why I don't believe that decreasing the number of city councilors is valid. We need to get more voter participation through outreach and engagement. And even in the last section, we said increase the number of signatures as a first step of getting more civic engagement, getting that outreach. But it is a 50-50 proposition. It's our city leaders who are dedicated to the service of the citizens and to the community. But then it's the citizens who also have to do the outreach. And so I do feel that if we're asking our city leaders to get more signatures and do the person-to-person, I think that if the things are going to do is if a group is going to want to recall, then maybe that is the same fair demand we make, that it does have to be the person-to-person, knock on the door, get the signatures.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, Mary. Great point. Thank you. Councilor Todd Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, Cheryl kind of made my point, but I was just going to say it's not really about technology per se. It isn't about, just trying to drag us into it's about kind of what's acceptable and there's lots of different ways to do it. I think I get what you were saying, Mimi, about kind of the DocuSign, you're talking about electronic signatures, right? So there's no easy way to verify that, and it's different when it's a bank or a company that has all this set up and they just replicate the same thing to every person they do. But it's hard. It'd be hard for the city of Chelsea. And what are you going to do with all these people that don't have access to computers, or it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think at this particular time, I think when the time comes and the state says, okay, we should probably do, So I'm just making the same point that Cheryl already made. So I'll just close it with that. And it's a good idea to want to be tech savvy, but it's not always about that. And so I think the problems with that aren't really with us not wanting to be tech savvy. It's just that it's kind of a, it's just a tougher thing, I think, for the city to do. So.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, Councilor Todd Taylor. Anyone else have any comments? Mimi, is that any more questions that you may have?
No comments. Thank you.
Okay, great. So that concludes section 8. If there's not anyone else that wants to make any comments, that concludes our discussion. Thank you for submitting your comments. I'd just like to remind everyone, including folks who are watching, our next meeting will be not next week, but the following week. We meet here Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and we will be discussing section 9. So everyone, please read section 9. It's the general provisions. It includes all sorts of interesting subjects: inspection of documents, multiple member bodies, appointments, methods of appointments, disqualification from office. So it's a lot there. Please read section 9, and we are honestly just 2 more sections away from finishing reading this charter and then submitting and discussing what are some of the suggestions that we want to make. So please, everyone, stay safe and good luck. See you at the next meeting, 6 p.m. and have fun. Meeting concluded.